Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Game Junk Podcast. This is episode 106, recording on Sunday, May 22nd, 2022. My name is Frank.
My name is Sean.
And my name is Andrew.
And today we have a very special guest. Let's give a warm welcome to Nick Cooper from Drastic Games, talking about the newly released game Soundfall. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Thanks for having me, guys. So I'm co-founder of Drastic Games. We've been working on our first title, Soundfall, since late 2016, and we just released on May 11th on PC and all of the consoles: Switch, Xbox One, Series S and X, PS4, and PS5. It's a rhythm-based looter shooter. It's kind of a hybrid of two genres. We're trying to kind of take a mix of, different elements that players find familiar and mixing them together in a way that we hope, is new and interesting. So,
Well, very cool. Congratulations on the game release. 6 years. That's a long time.
Oh, man.
Spend on a game.
A little too long, but I'm just glad that we made it here.
For sure. So, I mean, we've all played the game. I think Huck obviously has played it the most. He did work on the game. And we played some co-op today as well. So, 6 years, I assume part of that is, the first game the studio's put together. I guess in terms of what you did on the game, like what was your role? How big is the team? Did you have to wear a lot of hats? Like what kind of stuff did you do?
I definitely wore a lot of hats. The team was very small. Like, we fluctuated in size over development. Like, most of the first years of it was just me and my co-founder, Julian Trutman. And there were a few times where we had, people come on for little bits of contract work here and there and kind of little bursts. And that was, we weren't really in full production because we were just funding this thing like with our own savings and stuff. It wasn't like, it was before we had a publishing deal or any substantial funding. And then kind of that initial part was like, figuring out what game we wanted to make, and then kind of getting started, realizing it had a lot more potential than we initially thought, and that kind of expanded the scope. And that led to eventually running a crowdfunding campaign on Fig in 2018. And, we also put together a demo that we took to a bunch of expos like PAX and EGX and MagFest. Then from there, we were just basically trying to get more substantial funding from like a publishing deal or other investment. And that took some time. And then eventually we did with Noodle Cake, our publisher, who we partnered with starting in, I think it was like spring of 2020. So, and at that point, we actually had some funding behind us, and we started bringing on more like team members, some full-time and some part-time. And I think at the max, we were probably around like the mid-teens in terms of headcount. Some of those were like external studios we were working with and stuff. But I don't think we ever went above 20. And then even when we were high, we were not that high for very long. Kind of for the most of the end of production, it was around 10-ish people.
Okay. And you're located in North Carolina, correct?
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina, but the studio or everyone else that's been on the team has been all over the place, like all over the U.S., Canada. We've had some people in Europe. We've had at one point we had one guy in Australia. Like it's kind of just we make it work. It's all remote everywhere, and we were kind of doing the remote thing, since the beginning. So it works great for us, and we were kind of had a head start of that when everyone else kind of started having to do it.
Yeah, I guess, you started in the regular world, then went into the COVID world, and now you're back out of it. So the game's seen a lot. Now, I can be a bit of a bull in a china shop, as people tell me. So I'm going to defer to Sean for a second here. Sean, am I missing any lay of the land stuff here? You're pretty good at that stuff. I
don't know if Nick wants to talk at all about even his background before starting Drastic.
Yeah. I guess my first industry job was like an internship at Vicarious Visions back in like 2004. And then I had another internship at Treyarch in 2006, and then worked at Crystal Dynamics full time for a bit on Tomb Raider Underworld, and then went to Epic Games and worked at Epic for most of my career. Like I worked on a little bit of Unreal Tournament 3, some of the Gears games, Paragon, and Fortnite, and then a few other things that never actually saw the light of day. But then
we know all about that.
I know everyone has a few of those.
So,
sorry, go ahead, John.
Well, just on that, like, I guess I'm curious, what was the decision, or why did you make the decision, I guess, to move from Epic to, something indie? Was there a specific reason there, or?
It's kind of something I always wanted to do eventually. But it was also one of those things where it's like, you think of it as like, oh, it's like this far future, like, pie in the sky sort of idea. And you don't know if you're ever actually going to do it. But then I got to a point where I was like, I wasn't really like, I felt kind of stagnant. I didn't feel like, I wasn't really interested in what I was doing as much anymore. It just felt like more of the same. And I eventually was just like, I just gotten to the point where I paid off my student loans. And so kind of my financial situation had completely changed. And I was like, let's just do it.
Let's blow all that money I've got now.
Let's do it. Like one thing that I guess one thing that did make it easier was like almost immediately after I quit Epic, like literally like 3 weeks later, I went back and started doing part-time contract work. So I wasn't like just without income for
you could
most
bridge
of it.
the gap a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so it made the transition like a lot less stressful, because that's one of the biggest scary things about going off and starting a company. It's like, well, where's the money going to come from? Even if we do everything right, there's just a time before you start selling games. I mean, even if you don't take like 6 years to do it.
Okay, so I know I asked this. I don't know. Like, you said you wore many hats. If you had to say like the one area you worked on Soundfall the most, what would that be? Like design programming kind of cross between the two of those. Like that's kind of always been where I've landed. Like I was doing like, gameplay programming and AI programming and stuff during most of my career, in AAA. And, that was kind of just the initial thing I started doing here. But I also, at least how it worked at Epic, you were actually doing a lot of the design in that as well. You're kind of a hybrid programmer designer. Sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of where I spent most of my time on Soundfall, is doing that stuff. But then I also kind of just ended up absorbing all the production. So we didn't have like a specific producer, and I just kind of ended up doing all that, being the one like scheduling sprints and milestones and assigning JIRAs and hassling people to close their tickets.
I haven't had to do that before, thankfully. I
actually kind of enjoy it,
Yeah, I think I would like it too, but I've had very good people who've done that kind of stuff that I've worked with.
Yeah.
When they're good, it's greatly appreciated. When they're not, it's not the best.
It hurts everyone.
But I want to go back to like how you said you started as just a couple people, and was this like, did you prototype a lot of games, or let's say once you settled on the concept or idea of Soundfall, was it like mechanics you had worked out and then you expanded from there? Because I'm kind of curious, like when I'm playing this, there's very action rhythm-based core fundamental mechanics, and I could see that taking a lot of forms, whether it's a looter shooter, a roguelite, a platformer. You could go a lot of directions. So I'm kind of curious like how you went from mechanics to subgenre, or if it was a completely different approach at all.
So I guess kind of how it started out was like this is going to be funny, but we wanted to like we were going to do like a game jam and try to prototype something that we thought we could like make like a really quick game that was like 6 months to a year. And
I think that's how every game
basically
starts out.
just get, even if it wasn't this big, successful thing, at least get like some income coming into the company to start out. But we also wanted to build something where like it would be like a foundation for potentially other things, like where the tech we would be building for it could be reused in other games,
Sure.
you know, like so that game too, we wouldn't just be starting from zero. Well, so we had a bunch of ideas, like you know, between me and Julian, like there was like, doing like, you know, I'm trying to remember some of them, but like kind of the ones that started resonating the most where I kind of wanted to do like I had this idea for doing some kind of rhythm thing because I'd been playing this game Audio Shield on Vive at the time, which is like this procedural, like it's kind of like Beat Saber, but I think it was before Beat Saber, and it's procedurally generated from the music where like you basically have these like blue and orange orbs coming at you, and you have a shield on each hand that matches those colors, and you block them as they come at you. And I was like, I wonder what other cool stuff you could do with like procedural music stuff. So my original thought there was like an Ikaruga style, like, you know, arcade shooter where like maybe the enemies are spawning like on the notes to the music or something like that. And Julian kind of pushed us to do something more like, why don't we kind of do something more like twin stick shooter, because that could be more generalized to other types of games rather than just kind of the on rails sort of thing. So we kind of prototyped the mix of those things at first, and like it was going pretty well. It's like, okay, we can shoot stuff. That's pretty easy. But then I was also trying to get the actual audio stuff working, and like at one point towards the end of this game jam, it was just only like 4 days that we did this. Like I got our little capsule enemies. They were basically like, think of like little pills that are like just black capsules with a mask on, and those were placeholder enemies. And I got one of those like bouncing and like squashing and stretching to the beat of the music, and I was like holy shit, this looks amazing. And I like pulled Julian over. I'm like, dude, check this out. And he's like, this is it. This is the game. And you know, we basically that game jam ended up being like a little combat bowl with a couple little enemies you could shoot, and they were bouncing the beat, and it was just fun. There was no beat input stuff or anything like that. Yeah, and we knew we were onto something there. So it kind of just grew and expanded from there. Some of the other stuff, like the looter shooter and stuff, is more of just like what else can we do to both increase like retention, like, you know, people wanting to keep playing, because like you have just like a twin stick shooter that can get like, I've seen it all after like a couple levels and go, like, how do we keep people wanting to play more and more? And then we kind of took the audio analysis and kind of put that into all these other systems too, because it's like, well, why use just like random seeds and stuff? We have this data that we're gathering and using in this unique way. Let's use it in a whole bunch of unique ways, and that's kind of how it grew out from there.
I was going to save this question, but you know, on the Steam version of the game, I think it's just on the Steam version, you can import your own music, which kind of probably seems to be you know, something you borrowed from playing Audio Shield, which I've never played, and I looked it up, and I'm definitely going to check it out because I like those kind of procedural audio games. But I imported a few songs today, and I replayed some songs, and I think the level stayed the same. So I'm assuming that's a product of like the seeding of the song is like, it's the data of the song. It will always be the same with that song.
Yeah, as it is, that is true. It wasn't exactly like that during development, but I could go into that after. But yeah, so basically a song generates a level. The level is meant to be like the manifestation of that song. Yeah. So it basically gets a bunch of it when we do the audio analysis, we gather a whole bunch of parameters, and then we use those to like affect the kind of probability distribution in building out the level. And then also a seed on top of that. So like to give you an example, one of the parameters is called danceability, and this is like literally an actual like legitimate measure thing you can get from a piece of music. So danceability, we if I remember correctly, danceability we'll use to like say, how twisty is the level versus like just kind of straightforward, you know? Mm-hmm. And then there might be other
as well. Sorry. Like, is there parameters that affect what biome it gets picked as well? I would assume
the biome's a little bit more complicated, even. So that's kind of crazy. So what we wanted was basically each biome to roughly correspond to like a genre of music or a couple of genres of music. But it's like, well, how do you do that? You don't know when someone imports a song. How are you supposed to know that? Like, you for one of the early ideas was, check the tags, but there's like so many like songs in my music library that just didn't have any tags. So it's like, well, you can't count on that. So we did kind of this ridiculously complex solution, which is we trained a machine learning algorithm on like 1,000 different songs of various genres that I had like sit in and like classify by hand, because you basically give it like song and data of like 600 parameters that it determines from audio analysis, and then I say, it's this genre and it's like this family, and we trained it on that so that when it put a song in, it tries to like essentially guess the genre. In our tests, it was with like the 10 biomes or 10 approximate genres, it was a little over 70% accurate. But it doesn't need to be 100% accurate. Sometimes it's fun to like put in a pop song and it sends you to the volcano for some reason. But
some songs defy categorization.
And that's true as well. Yeah, like categorizing music is a very like subjective thing already, so you can't expect like a machine learning algorithm to get it right when like we don't get it right ourselves.
Okay, so I highly recommend maybe you pause or just check out some video of the game so you have a bit of a context. I should say that at the beginning. But in terms of setting the scene a bit, so it is a twin stick kind of shooter, but your right trigger is shooting a weapon, your left trigger is typically, or it's like a powered weapon, melee or a charge attack and stuff like that. It's a little more refined based on what character you're using, and you're kind of, I would say, if you think of this as a looter shooter, then each song is a mini dungeon. Does that sound about right? That
sounds just about right. Yeah.
Okay. So and it's weird because I meant to ask, are you musically inclined? I assume you are. Like, are you a musician?
I used to be, not like I would. It's hard for me to call myself that, but I was when I was growing up and through college and stuff. But I'm not like super knowledgeable about like theory and stuff. But I was a pretty hardcore rhythm game player. So that's where more of it came from.
All right, because I love music, but I just, when it's beat type stuff, I'm not that great at it. And I tried Crypt of the Necrodancer and some other similar type games, and I've always struggled. And I don't know if it's like my affinity to music, but in this game, I got it for the most part, and I was getting on the beat. But where it really clicked for me was importing my own music. Like, just if I know the song, that beat became like, if I was using my music, I was like super feeling it and getting into it. So I think a huge part of it,
to the beat,
was rock it out. It was Dua Lipa.
I'm glad people are really liking
out.
How many Ghost songs did you import?
It was all Dua Lipa. Well, exclusively Dua Lipa, which was fantastic for this game. And
I'm really glad people are appreciating the import feature a lot, because I was like, we were always kind of on the fence of like, is that going to be like the most used feature, or is that going to be something no one ever uses because it takes too much effort? And we were also worried, is like, do people even have music files in their hard drives these days? And unfortunately, like, streaming
just us old guys.
Yeah. Well, I had to get some on there to do it, but I think it is a great feature to have. I especially I'm going through the story. I think I'm halfway through the forest and digging it, but in terms of replayability and using the loot, I think the import is a great option. So I've been talking a lot. Let me defer to Huck and Sean here.
Well, I want to say about the import is, I think the part that is interesting for me, so I beat it this morning because, I don't know, we worked on it for like a year, but I never really like played it full right through because we had a full QA team, so it made it easy to not have to play it all the way through. And I'm at the point where I beat it. I'm at about level 23 or 24. And now to unlock the higher difficulties, I kind of have to grind a bit. Now, if I could do that grind to my own music choices, I can see that grind being a lot easier and a lot smoother to get up those higher levels. And I should mention that each level has a difficulty level, but those are unlocked based on your character level every 10 levels, right? And there's 5 or 4 different levels? Intensity levels, you call them?
There's actually 6 intensities.
Oh, 6.
Yeah.
So there's 6.
The intensity thing was really complicated to like figure out what to do with difficulty because we wanted there to be progression on the world map. Where you're going through the game, you feel like your character's growing and, getting stronger stuff. But then at the same time, we wanted to just be able to let you play any song you want anytime, both like in the free play menu or just, if you're importing and stuff. So like we had to figure out like, well, if you go too far in the story, is the free play going to be too easy? Or if you play too much free play, is the story going to be too easy or one of them going to be too hard? So we kind of ended up taking like kind of difficulty and progression and wrapping it into this one thing called intensity. And that's kind of where those buckets come in. So, but yeah, like, it makes it so that like, if you're playing on the world map, you play like 20 import songs or something and you come back, you're not just like overpowered anymore. You could just say like, oh, I'll just step up the intensity to be appropriate to where I am. So it kind of like,
I guess, sorry, that ties into another big part of the game, which Huck and I did today, co-op, like having to scale that with like multiple people. And if one person's really good and one person's not, like at least you can adjust difficulty in some ways and account for that type of stuff. But, I mean, overall, like there's so like the way there must have been huge challenges with scaling systems. You already had like kind of like that base data, which is analyzing the song, which feels like it was a driver for everything. But then, level scaling, it's a very ambitious game, especially for a first game from a studio to have leveling systems, co-op, multiple, platforms that you're releasing on, the importing features, and we haven't even gotten into licensing, like getting music for a game this, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So, seriously,
each one of those is a long story.
So, congratulations in general, because that
Thank you.
Having all of that kind of fit together nicely is really an achievement. And then, graphically and presentation, the game is super polished. Like,
thank you.
Within each level, like I think it looks fantastic. I love the art style. There's animated cutscenes. This game has a lot going on, so I'm not surprised that it took like 6 years, especially starting probably prototypes and stuff like that. Like it's not like we've been in indie studios that are a couple people and like you grow, contractors scale in and out. Like I get it. Like I don't think like I just think it's like really ambitious, and I'm sure after 6 years you've been playing this game for so long, it must feel so good to kind of be, well, you're probably doing support stuff and bug fixes.
I think in a way it feels good, but yeah, I've been like, you think, oh, the game launches where we could chill for a bit, and that's kind of how it was in AAA. But like, man, we launched and I was just going at maximum speed afterwards because you have like all the support stuff. We have like
press
support,
stuff,
press stuff, marketing materials, patches, like
crossplay not working, or cross gen not working. Oops.
Like the thing I think a lot of you guys know this, but like a lot of players don't think about is that like you have like a development team and a test team, and you guys might be playing the game every day for years, but like if your game does even like if your game isn't a complete flop, you release and like within the first hour there's been more like person hours put into your game than you have over the entire development. There is always going to be stuff that you missed that someone's going to find right away. And, we're just we're scrambling to try to keep up with that,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know where to jump in here, but you're talking about the track import thing, and I haven't tried that yet because to me that feels like more of a thing I would try maybe after beating the game. And I like the idea of the curated kind of playlists, and I don't know, I guess we can talk about. I am curious about the choice of songs and artists and that whole process. But what about since you're talking about sort of post-release stuff, what about DLC? Like, could you do song packs? I feel like that's something for all these rhythm games, and like since you can't import songs on console, it feels like that would be a cool thing to add.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking of doing. Once the initial launch and round of patches stuff calms down, well, we definitely would like to do probably just free updates with music packs, because we actually some of our music licensing, we have potentially access to a bunch more songs. And I also know some of the artists we worked with individually were like, have been like pumped and they want to do more stuff for us. But we'll see what we can work out. I think it's a great idea, and I'm hoping that we can, do a bunch of that.
I'm sure with rhythm-based games, like teaching the player how to do it is one of the biggest struggles. Like and like even Huck and I don't know if this is an experience thing with Huck, but he like, I guess your struggle with slower beat songs was more like not being able to attack as much, where I found like I was loving the slower beat songs. Like I could feel those more as a newcomer to the game. So were there any debates about like tempo and the first songs people should play as, and why you picked a certain tempo versus another one?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we did a bunch of changes to kind of like the track list and the kind of organization and order of them over development. Well, we kind of ended up going with, Skyline's kind of supposed to be like the pop area. We tried to find stuff that was close to 120 BPM in for the Skyline, because that felt like the most kind of like, kind of middle of the road, like average, like people can probably, almost everyone gets that pretty easily. So we kind of wanted to keep it there for that area in the beginning. And then as you go through the game, you start getting kind of more complex stuff. Like you get to Volcano and you have like tempo changes and stuff mid-song and lots of crazy stuff going on. And, then there's stuff in Forest where it's a lot like the beat isn't as like, there's not like a heavy bass, hitting where the beat is in all the songs and stuff like that. So, we both wanted to represent like a lot of genres, to kind of fit into those biomes. We tried our best to find stuff that we thought fit, that we thought felt good to like be hitting the beat,
I think out of I've played 3 biomes and they all had like a nice unique feel in terms of the music. And I think I had the most fun with the second biome just because it's a little slower tempo. And for whatever reason, I'm gravitating to that. But I think
Sean, you need to get to the 6th world. That's the synth. The synth.
Oh, nice.
Is it right? Nocturne City? Is that 6?
Oh, that's the 5th.
Fifth one.
Yeah.
There you go. That's going to be your bread and butter, Dwight.
The higher BPM stuff, like it's weird where like intrinsically, I think it should be easier, but it's almost harder. Like it feels like anything could work. And I don't know. I just haven't done that many high BPM songs, and I just struggle with the higher BPM stuff.
So on one hand, you have, more opportunities to like attack more quickly, but the thing is, so do the enemies. So because all of their attacks and moves and stuff are, they're not in like seconds, they're in beats. So a grunt punch will come out faster if the BPM is higher. It'll come out slower if the BPM is slower. So it just kind of changes quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I'm aware that the enemies are in time with everything as well, but sometimes I forget that aspect.
I actually really like that the gameplay changes in that subtle way based on what song you pick, and it does add a different level to the gameplay that is not just like a new mechanic. It's kind of the same mechanic, just at a different pace, which I appreciate. It does add a little bit of variety in not like an overly complicated way, and nothing you need to relearn or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm curious to get to the levels where the tempo is changing mid-song. That sounds really interesting. But I actually, I mean, you guys were just talking about the slower beats. I also found the slower beats a little bit more challenging.
Me too.
And the one that I think was the hardest for me was there was a ska song in there. And I think because you hear the sort of the upswing or whatever you call it of the guitar, I was trying to sync to that, but I think it's actually still the bass of the drum that's kind of the main beat. So I think that's where I was getting out of sync a bit, because that's the whole thing with ska, right? It's kind of like on the offbeat. But yeah, I don't know. I found that interesting. And yeah, I can see how, a lot of different genres of music can present different challenges. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I had to turn on the metronome to help. There's like a setting, Dwight, you might want to look into to turn on the metronome, which is just like a beat counter basically for you to help.
So
and
when you mention that,
helps.
When you mention that, that's not just the visual. You're saying there's actually like an audio click track.
There's an audio one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I haven't tried that yet, but that's good.
We
to know.
actually, in the patch that we pushed out the other day, we made it default to being partially on for new players. We don't change your setting if you've already been playing, but yeah, so that you can have like an audio metronome play, and it can either play all the time, or you can have it play when, like, if you haven't hit anything on beat in some time, whether through just not pressing anything or by being off, then it'll just start. You can have it start up automatically, and then go away. It'll go away again when you start hitting on beat again. So it's just kind of meant to like help a bit if you're like having trouble hearing, discerning where it is in the song, kind of where that foot tap should happen. And a lot of people seem to find it helpful.
It is helpful to me. I was wondering, is there an option to adjust the volume of the metronome at all, like just the metronome?
There is not right now, but that is on my task list for the next patch.
I didn't look into it. But I was like, I wish I could like bring it down a little bit and compared to everything else. So that's cool. Good to hear that being worked on. Not that it's a big deal at all.
But yeah, I mean, I could see that being very helpful for some songs have quieter parts, right, where the beat almost fades out. And so if you're like in one of those sections of the song, sometimes you're stuck a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think a huge design question that I'm thinking of when I play this game and turning on my designer brain is, whether you punish or reward for being on beat, because I think a positive thing about the game is even if you're not perfect with the beat, it's still playable. You can get through a level. You might not, get perfect on it, or it might not feel as satisfying. But I think there's interesting design decisions as how being on beat, it isn't punished that severely, I don't think. It's more rewarded instead of punished. And I think I like that design direction in general. And I think someone who didn't get it, quote unquote, could still play through the game as just a fun shooter, beat 'em up. Like, I think the beat just enhances all the mechanics when you start to get it. I don't know if that's a conscious choice or I'm just
definitely
projecting.
We didn't want like people to pick up the game and like before they like kind of get it, like to just be like completely turned off because they like can't do anything or something like that. We thought that would just be like instantly like walk away if they're playing the demo, or just refund the game or whatever. Like, so we didn't want to be too punishing. Like as you kind of said, we wanted to lean more on like the reward the on beat rather than punish the off beat. I mean, there's still like some penalty there, like for the beat blasters overheating and stuff, but like it's not just like it's not like locking you in place or
and it's not like after your first miss. It's if you're consistently missing stuff, and like it's pretty loose. I don't know if that changes. Like, do the penalties change as you scale up difficulty?
Not directly. However, there are some weapons or some beat blasters that enhance that reward and that penalty. And then there are some that dampen both that reward and penalty. So if you're like one of those people that's, maybe you're not perfect at hitting on the beat and you want to sacrifice some of that beat bonus to make it so you're not penalized as much for being off beat, versus like, you're like, oh, I'm hitting 100% anyway, I'm going to go for the thing that makes that even better. But then if I hit like one or two offbeat notes, I'm like overheated.
Okay, yeah, I really like that idea. So using the modifiers and equipment to even more so cater it depending on whether you are really into the beat aspect of the game or it's maybe something you're not that great at, like me. But I do like, it's a game where I want to get good at the beat. It's like when I first tried Rock Band, Guitar Hero, DJ Hero, whatever it was, like I kind of stink and you just get better and better the more you play. Eventually I hit a skill ceiling in all those games, but I don't think the skill ceiling really applies the same way to this game. Like, I think once you get it, you kind of get it.
Yeah, it eventually becomes like, kind of both managing the beat and then just the actual like, shooter gameplay. That's kind of where it gets where the real difficulty gets in later, is just kind of the bullet hell and lots of enemies and that sort of thing in the higher difficulties, and then managing like elemental effects and you're building a good loadout for the level you're doing and stuff like that.
Yeah, and in terms of like that scalability, like it's interesting because I played with Huck. He was high level, I was low level, and I didn't notice it. I don't know if Huck was killing everything, and I was. Were you?
Oh yeah. If you looked at our 2 scores, like after each level, you would have like 100 points, and I have like 2,000.
But I'm assuming that's because you get points on the actual kill, not on damage. Because like I'm hitting things, like it doesn't feel like I'm not doing anything, but you were probably always getting the kill shot and the points there. So
probably, yeah.
But I don't know. Like it actually, I was worried when we matched up in a co-op and he's super high level that I would feel like useless, and I might have been useless, but I didn't feel useless, which is the important thing.
I feel like it's really hard to make it fun to play with mismatched levels in co-op games. I feel like there's a lot of games I don't end up playing as much co-op as I'd like, because if I'm like busy working or something and like my friends get 10 levels above me, then it's like, well, we can't do anything either. Either you're one-shotting everything or I'm just getting one shot, but we tried to kind of make it so that it wasn't like that. And I mean, I think there's still going to be some disparity. Like if you have a level 50 person coming in with like a level 10, then they're just going to wipe the floor with everything. But like, I don't think it's as severe in our game as it is in some others that I've played.
Yeah,
well, and
it's almost an impossible problem to solve. So I think just my experience means it's kind of solved, at least.
Well, I think that's where the intensity level that we talked about before comes in, where we were doing warm up at first because it defaults to Frank was hosting, so it was whatever his level is, which is level 4 or something. So it's defaulting to warm up, and that was obviously we were just wiping the floor with everything. So then we went up to moderate, and it was much more manageable and fun. We weren't just like I wasn't one-shotting everything, and Frank was just kind of like walking through my wake of dead bodies. But it is interesting, and I want to ask a question about kind of generating the levels. And you talked about how they're procedurally generated based on the song generation, but obviously there is some difficulty with that. There's a couple stages back to back that seem to have very, very similar layouts, I found. And like, how did you go about doing that? Did you have the ability to handcraft tweak any of the levels, or was that all purely through the analysis and then having to tweak the numbers in the analysis itself?
For the most part, it was all just the analysis, and kind of part of the side effect of having like kind of genres pretty grouped together on like the world map is like they're going to have similar musical attributes. We spend a lot of time tuning it to try to get like level variety even within that, but it's not there's only so many level chunks that a team can make with our size and budget and everything.
Could you actually go into the details of how you actually construct the levels? Yeah. I don't think you ever really mentioned like how you actually like put the levels together.
So think of it like you have a whole bunch of like Lego blocks. The levels are made out of what we call chunks, and then in those chunks there might also be sub chunks that go like within them. And you're basically taking these and kind of building them together into a level that we think is going to match the length of the song, like minus a little bit. So basically, we take the length of the song, we compute an estimate from all of the Lego blocks in our library. Oh, this one will probably take the players 15 seconds to get through this chunk. This chunk will only take them 5. This chunk might take them 30 because it's big. And we try to build a level out that fits that. And it tries to build it out so that even the branches are accounted for in that. So you should be able to basically go down all the branches, if there's a treasure chest or whatever, get that and get to the end before the song loops if you are on point. So, it kind of it basically stitches those together, and that's and then within that, there's the sub chunks that can swap. There's some types of props that can swap depending on other parameters that happen in the song. So it's building Lego pieces essentially.
That's cool, because I was wondering if the levels were built to sort of match the length of the song, because like a bunch of times it did work out pretty well for me. Like I was getting to the end right at the end of the song and I was like, oh, that's cool. But then there's other times where I was exploring a lot more and like kind of taking my time, and I was thinking, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, is this accounted for? But I guess that makes sense.
But there's tons of systems that go into that, right? Like even the teleporters, the distances of those probably need to be adjusted based on beats per minute and stuff like that. Like the way that data kind of gets incorporated into the level it's really interesting. And, it reads to me, Huck and I were talking about some polish stuff earlier today, and how the environment objects are incorporating that data and animating it all like gives you a feeling of playing a song, which is not easy to do. Like I even remember like the mobile, or no, this was on the Vita. The first procedural game with music that I got into I think it was called Beats, and it was just like tapping 1, 2, or 3. Like there was 3 things, and when I went on a trip, it was like, okay, I can listen to my music and play a game at the same time. So I'm glad that there's more games that are trying to do that. I've never got into the modding world or the importing world of Beat Saber, but even just playing Soundfall, I'm like, I should look into that, because when it's songs you love, it just makes it that much more fun to do that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of what we were hoping, like, it's like, we're going to provide you with a whole bunch of music. But if you want what we hopefully like essentially infinite replay value, because there's infinite music out there.
Yeah.
So you can...
Well, and I mean, there wasn't a song I disliked, or I remember being like, I could do without this song when I played through all the levels. Like they were all decent. I didn't know a lot of the artists, which is fine. That's cool. It's interesting to hear some new stuff, but like you said, the vibes of each of the levels I thought were pretty consistent. Like I got the feeling with the forest and the beach. It was pretty good.
Since we're talking about that, like, can you talk a little bit about your process of building the playlists for the levels and the artists that you kind of connected with and stuff?
Yeah, that was a lot of work. So there's a good amount of songs in the game. Maybe like a little more than half are from a partnership we had with Epidemic Sound, and they have like kind of this big, vast like music library that you can kind of, that we basically licensed with them. And then there's all the rest of the songs are either like existing songs from those artists or songs that they wrote specifically for Soundfall. And those ones we basically reached out like individually. Some of them were just essentially cold emails that I made. Some of them are our lead animator, Nate Horsfall, is actually like really connected with like video game music community through like MagFest and a bunch of other like organizations and events. And he kind of did a lot of intros for a lot of our musicians as well. One of the tricky things there is like licensing in a way such that people can stream the game. Because you might notice like a lot of games out there, like rhythm games like Rock Band and Guitar Hero, like people can't stream it because they don't actually, the rights that they have to put the song in the game don't then extend to like a user streaming it. And we wanted it to be such that like we have within the context of Soundfall, we could basically, give the green light to do that sort of thing. And that was something I remember like, other developers warned us about up front. Like, oh, if you're doing a rhythm game, you got to be careful about streaming and stuff. Kind of the one caveat to that is we do have to whitelist channels, but we basically have a form on our website that people.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a little cumbersome, but it's better than just not being able to. So,
I guess I'm kind of curious. You don't have to go too far down this road if you don't want to, but the streaming thing is people warning you. Is it warning you like, hey, people might not stream it because of this, or is it the developer's responsibility to control streamers with music? Like, it seems like that would be on the individual streamer, not your company.
Well, the thing is, if our game had music that would just be like, get you DMCA'd, like, and then nobody would stream it, obviously. So
Yeah, it's
and
more
then
about
and then
people
that's
not
kind of the
being
main
able to
way that
stream the
people.
game, right?
Sorry.
It's more about people not being able to stream the game than it is.
Yeah, we didn't want to basically, if no one can stream your game, then like, you know, that kind of kills your game in this day and age, you know? Like that's how a lot of people find out about games and like make the decision to buy games, and they see, you know, a streamer playing something fun. So like if we didn't have that, it's like, you know,
it's
what we do.
so weird because it's something I don't relate to at all. Like I'm looking at like reviews, kind of, you know, opinions out there from other game developers. Like I've never really watched a streamer, so I don't know. But I'm not saying you're wrong by any means. It's just I'm so out of touch with that kind of stuff.
I mean, I kind of was too, but you know, like, I mean, I grew up with like Nintendo Power and like Game Informer and stuff, and that's how I found out about games. So like, streaming's pretty you know, new to me too. Like I don't watch a whole lot, but I mean, it's the thing now. It's the way you market games. So you know, I have to at least be familiar enough with it there, and the game needs to be streamer friendly.
If we're talking about music still, I don't know if you can answer this. You don't have to if you don't want to. Was there a song you wanted to get in the game that you couldn't because of licensing, money, anything like that? Like anything?
Oh, so I mean, there's probably
one above all else. One above all else.
Songs I would like, but I remember the range of rates for licensing music is so vast. It's basically it seems practically limitless. Well, like there's some artists that were just like, I just want my music in the game, and then you have some artists like there was one we reached out to that we thought was going to be within the scope of what we wanted. That was like $100,000 for a 1-year license, and we're like, that's more money at the time. It was more money than had ever entered our company. Period. Like And it's like also then it's like if it's a 1-year license, then like what do we do? Just scrap that level from the game after a year? Like we can't really do that, you know? So there were definitely there were numerous deals that didn't work out, both because of rates and because of the streamer needing to be streamer friendly being like one of our like no compromise, like if you can't accommodate this, then it's just not going to work out. So yeah, there was quite a bit that, you know.
Yeah, work out the reason I bring it up, one of our friends like makes documentary films and other movies and TV stuff, and it's like we hear some of the stories about licensing, and it's like I can't even imagine, you know, we're getting this many songs into a game rather than like just a select few, how far that can go. And I guess it's nice to have that big library to pull from. I wasn't aware of, you know, that there was kind of outlets out there. It makes sense that you can pull and build libraries from. And I guess it's a good way for artists to get noticed too, right? Like if they put their stuff on there's some mutual benefit to those kind of libraries and catalogs.
Yeah, I mean, and now, you know, hopefully, you know, Soundfall actually, you know, exposes them to more people that'll potentially be fans and stuff too, you know? Because like most people, like I find a lot of people listen to like a handful of genres, but like kind of beating the game, you kind of got to do a full tour of music, you know? So you might run into something that like isn't like anything you listened to before, and now you have a new type of music you like, or maybe you just discovered some artist that you never heard of in a genre you do like. So I don't know. I always found it was cool discovering music in games. Like I discovered music I liked in Guitar Hero that I wouldn't have discovered otherwise. And don't get me started on like Tony Hawk games, man.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
That's awesome.
EA Sports normally usually had, you know, a couple songs you'd never heard of that you really enjoy too if you play sports games. Kind of on the topic of music still, we brought it up a little pre-show, but the calibration thing and the lag you must have to deal with. So obviously it's on beat. How do you go about handling people with different setups and being able so they can actually play the game and not get frustrated and just, you know, throw their controller across the screen? Especially on PC. I guess on consoles it's a little more standard, but still possibly an issue.
It's tricky. I still think we need to do more work on that, honestly, because I think that is it's a tough thing to do, because like, everyone has, you have different like display devices, you have different like audio devices and sound systems, and like some are pretty easy and they just sync up, by default, and some are just not. We have a calibration option in the menu where we calibrate kind of separately, both like the audio lag and the visual lag, and then basically use that to like adjust like where the beat input window is, how the sound, where we play sounds versus where versus where the visual display is. And that'll help a lot of cases. But then there's always going to be those setups where it just does not work. Like I've been to setups, like I was in an Airbnb like last summer at one point, and I was like going to show some friends like the current build of the game, and I hook it up to the TV in the Airbnb, and that thing had so much lag. Like even if you got the audio and visual lined up, like the time difference between pressing button and action on screen was just so great, it was just unplayable. So I was just like, oh, screw it, we're just gonna play it on the laptop, guys, and then everyone had a great time. Yeah, and it's also hard because then you have like smart TVs and stuff, and sometimes they have a lot of latency. Like I literally, like the TV I use for development, like there was so much latency in it, and I found out that I had to turn it on. If I turned it on game mode, it works great. But without game mode, I even tried putting on like Super Mario World to be like, is it just our game? And I played, I'm like, no, I feel like I was like a lag before I jump.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And then I also had a pair of headphones before I got these, that I used earlier in development, that like if I played the game with the audio going through the headphones, I just couldn't do it. Like there was just way too much latency. But these headphones work great. Like and they're both wireless and stuff. So it's tricky. It's not a 100% solved problem. Calibration gets you part of the way there, and we basically just tried to do our calibration the exact same way that like Rock Band 3 did it. Because it's like, well, like Harmonix is probably way smarter than I am at this, so I'm going to try to like follow their lead,
They definitely spent more money, I would say.
Rock Band for like 4 hours last night, so I still play Rock Band a lot. It's great.
I had a similar issue with Rock Band. I went over to a buddy's house and his TV had so much lag, and he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I cannot hit the drums at the proper beat at all. What are you talking about? He just could not see it.
When you play Rock
Another
Band,
thing with Rock Band is
one house, one person's house, never go anywhere else, never change anything.
Yeah. I've definitely been to other people's houses where like they also just, I guess by nature of how they play the game, where they felt calibration was right was different than where I felt it was right. And I was just like, how are you playing this right now? I feel great. And then if I calibrate it, it's the opposite.
Yeah, there's definitely the human factor in there too. That's crazy. So I just wanted to ask, I mean, Huck and Frank got to play the co-op today, and I didn't get a chance to try it, but it seemed like that would have also added even more complication to some of the stuff we were just talking about. Like, can you talk a little bit about the challenge of doing co-op?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, the thing about co-op was, like, that was actually, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but that was actually one of kind of our, like, main requirements for the first game we made. I was like, I want to do co-op, and if we can, I want to do local and online, because I never feel like there's enough co-op games, or if there are, it's like there's either one or the other. So it's like, I feel like there's almost nothing you could play couch co-op these days. There's like a few things, and then I don't know. I also like just having more online co-op games to play with people. So yeah, it was important to us, but it was also like massive amount of work. The local, not so bad, because like, it's just a matter of kind of like getting the scaling right of like, oh, you just threw another person in the mix. How do we scale up the enemies and the difficulty so it doesn't just, you're not just cleaning up really quick. But the online was a massive undertaking, both from like, I mean, as Andrew knows, both from like the, individual platforms, like how they handle like, starting matches online and inviting friends and all of that. And then all the cert requirements on top of it. but then also just like the actual like gameplay networking of like it's a rhythm game. You need to feel like there's no latency at all, but now you have an internet connection. You could be playing with someone, you know, in like Europe or Asia or something, and you still want it to feel good or as good as it can. And that's just like, we ended up doing like luckily that's kind of where a lot of my background was at Epic, was like a lot of our games were like, or pretty much all the games I worked on there were like online and had multiplayer components. So, you know, I had a lot of experience doing like netcode stuff, but then adding the rhythm into the mix, I had to kind of do a lot of like tricks and stuff that didn't really need to happen in those other games. Like we do a lot more like trusting the client than you would in like a competitive shooter, to make so that rhythm experience still feels good. Another thing that was like interesting, it was like there are a lot of challenges with making shooting feel good from a top-down camera that we just didn't run into working on like over-the-shoulder third-person games or like first-person games. And because you see a lot more of like what the projectile is doing versus if it's coming out of the camera, or the projectile or the hit scan weapon or whatever, versus like you literally see the whole trajectory of it when you're top-down. So that, like, at least in my opinion, it was a lot trickier getting that feeling good than it was in like, you know, Fortnite.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wouldn't have even thought about that. But
so you mean like the weapon fall off kind of stuff, or what are you referring to there?
I mean, like, you want to, like, you press the button and feel like the projectile is coming out of the right spot and going in the right direction and stuff. Whereas, like, when it's coming out of the camera, like, if it's off, like, if it's coming, if it doesn't get replicated until, like, X milliseconds later and it spawns far away and stuff, it doesn't really, you might not even notice. You just have a really big muzzle flash that kind of hides it. But you don't get that from top down. You see, oh, I shot and the projectile came out, like, you know, 2 feet to the left, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. I gotcha.
I don't have any questions left. I have one, but Sean or Huck, if you have a long list ready to go.
The only other thing I wanted to ask briefly about was just, and you touched on this, I think, Frank, but the 2D animated cutscenes, which I think, you know, are really cool and just add like another level of polish to this game. Like, what was the inspiration there? And I don't know. I thought it was great.
So we worked with Double Plus Productions on those animated cutscenes, and we wanted something that could both be like a cool moments for the player, because it's really rewarding when you like happen upon these while you're playing, you know, like something that was both like a rewarding moment for the player and kind of brought our characters more to life than you get from that like top down angle. Because, like, you know, our character models are meant to be viewed from the top down. You know, they don't look as good when you look at them head on. So we needed something like some way that you could see the characters kind of from different perspectives and have them feel like alive and detailed. And this felt like a great way to do it. And like kind of also like one of our inspirations for like the story and the characters in the team was like Saturday morning cartoons and like things like, you know, Voltron, Ninja Turtles, like even stuff like Sailor Moon, Power Rangers and stuff like that. And what better way to kind of also capture that a little bit than by having like 2D animation as, you know, part of how these characters, how you see these characters, you know?
That reminds me of like the dialogue sequences between levels in the story as well. Like some really cool character design, like kind of fantasy based. Like I thought like all of those illustrations were pretty interesting. They were all had something different to offer. Each of the different worlds and the characters, I'm like, those are cool designs.
Yeah, that was so kind of the initial design of like, you know, the first few heroes was done by Nicholas Cole, and then Adam Tazi was kind of our art director over like the last couple of years of development, and like we kind of wanted something that was like you know, kind of fantasy, kind of a little sci-fi feeling, but like unique in its own way. So we always like, you probably could tell from playing the game, but we're huge Zelda fans, among other things. And like one of the things we wanted to do that Zelda does really amazing is like, it's not just a generic like fantasy setting. Like you have all sorts of things that have like elves and dwarves, but like you don't have Gorons in any other fantasy setting. You don't have Zora in any other fantasy setting. There's all like unique to that world, and we wanted that to be how Soundfall felt as well. Like, you like when you find like the people that live in, say, the forest, like, I mean, you might be something similar you've seen before, but like they're their own thing. They're not like just another fantasy trope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we kind of just wanted it to feel like its very own unique world in that way.
That definitely comes through. So nicely done.
So one thing we haven't really talked about too much, which I wanted to ask about, was the weapons and the drops. And how did you guys handle just balancing that? Because I was finding that, you go through a section, you get some good loot, and then you go through another section, it feels like you get nothing. The store's not giving you anything you want. So, like, how difficult was it to kind of manage that, determine what to even give the player as a reward, basically?
Oh man, that was definitely tricky, and that was one of those things where we were going like, the pendulum was swinging really far on that balancing thing. It's just a matter of like, you tune the numbers, get some feedback, both like, just us playing ourselves, but then also like, our play tests on the team. And then when we eventually had like, we would have like friends and family like play test the game and stuff, and just kind of like narrow in on stuff. Kind of the way it works now is like, we would kind of set drop rates based on like intensity and level, like for like a normal treasure chest, but then what rarity tier an item is going to drop, and then like if you get a bronze medal, the end of level chest will be like a little bit worse than that, and if you get a silver, it's a little bit better than that, and then like gold and plat are like way better. But that's still, it is a roll. Like you could still plat and get like a common and just be like, oh, what the hell? But I mean, it can be frustrating, but it's also kind of the fun of the game. You kind of need, at least in my opinion, you kind of need to get an occasional like bad drop in order to appreciate the good drops. Because if everything is good, then that actually becomes boring in itself. But yeah, it's definitely tricky to balance. I'm not even sure we've, I wouldn't even call it solved now. Like literally we just patched the other day and did balance changes there. And I'm sure we'll keep doing balance changes because like, like we were talking about, there's just a lot more people putting a lot more hours into the game. And what we thought as developers was right. Like, it's always going to need adjusting. Like I thought our highest intensity was I tuned it so it would be hard for me to play, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna people might think this is too hard. This is gonna be a problem." And then you go on Twitter and you see a Japanese player just crushing it without a problem. It's like, "Yo, it's been out for a week, dude. Chill. How are you this good?"
Yeah, I have one more softball question that is more traditional. So there's 5 characters in the game. Have you seen kind of like watching Twitch or whatever, through whatever method, have you seen which character is sort of like the de facto favorite of everyone? Because I have my own, and I'm wondering how it's lining up.
It's hard for me to say. I think people really seem to really like Jackson because he's like a himbo, I guess. But I don't know. I hear a lot of people have a lot of really strong opinions about who their favorite is, like gameplay wise. And I've heard people be like, "Oh, I play as such and such," and everyone else seems, they're OP, and everyone else is like blah, and then someone else will say like the exact opposite, and it's interesting. It's very, I guess that means we did our job well because like, hopefully like different characters should resonate with different people, both personality wise and gameplay wise. That's kind of the hope, Yeah. So who is your favorite, Andrew?
It's Lydia. I love the ranged, powerful attack, which I think she's the only one that has that. Jackson kind of does a little bit, but I guess his is more area of attack rather than ranged.
I think Lydia's probably my favorite too. I do think Bright is probably. I think I'm stronger with Bright, but I think I have more fun playing Lydia.
Is Bright the one with the shield?
Yep.
Oh, really? Okay. I could not figure that out. I kept getting... Because I use the auto-target almost exclusively, So with the shield, it's much more effective if you're using the twin stick shooter mechanic.
Yeah, definitely.
So me trying to switch back, even the level where you're forced to use her when you first get the power, I was getting my ass kicked like constantly because I couldn't deflect the shield. I wasn't used to using the right stick. I am really reliant on the auto aim, so I use that so I can focus on dodging and just kind of tap into the beat rather than having to aim accurately.
I think it's worth mentioning though, like with the twin stick aspect of the game, the auto aim is really good. Like I love the auto, and especially when you auto strafe, like it feels really natural. How you transition into strafing and non-strafing mode.
I'm glad you guys think that. I was actually like, for most of development, I was the one fighting against auto aim because I'm like, it's a twin stick, you got to aim. But I gave in on that argument, and I'm glad I did because opinions like these.
Okay, so my last question was relating tangentially to that. Like when you release a game, within a team, there's always like contentious design decisions. Like half of the people say we have to do this, no, we can't do that. What was your most contentious design decision as like a whole within the company? Like about the design of the game.
Oh man, that's
stirring the pot.
You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But,
too many. I will say, I will say another one that I gave in on that was also the right choice. Beat input. The original game did not have beat input for the first little chunk of the project, as I think I mentioned when we were talking earlier.
So by that you mean attacking on the beat. That's what you mean by beat.
Yeah, like attacking on the beat. Like it was like everything in the like the first. It was only like month or two of the project did not have that. It was like everything else is moving on the beat, and you're just playing a shooting game and in this world of music. But it was actually something what swayed me. It was like me and Julian were arguing about it back and forth. Part of my reason for not wanting to do it is because I was worried it was going to be really, really hard, and I was right on that part. It was really hard. And I also worried that our audio analysis wouldn't be good enough to do it well. But what pushed me was like we were doing regular play tests with people outside of the company, like just kind of our local friends, and they basically suggested it independently. And I was like, I guess we got to at least try it. And then we got it kind of working a little bit. And the next time we did a play test, everyone liked it. And it's like, well, I guess this is the game.
Yeah, you have to listen to playtesters, especially when there's common themes always. Like whether you disagree with it or not, there's something there if a lot of people who are playtesting your game are saying it. So
there's some pretty big changes that even that came about even pretty late in development due to like playtests like that too. Like the arenas, we call them the arenas, like basically the last level of a biome that's like this, everything goes crazy. Like we did that pretty close to the end because people felt like it was like really anticlimactic to just like finish with just kind of another normal level. And we have two bosses, but like we would have loved to have more bosses. It's just this it's only so much we can't push the game back another year and add more bosses. But the arena is like basically they came together pretty late, but they've been hit. I think like I know our
like
team all really loved them.
Has there been any discussion, getting back to what we were talking about having a non-beat mode within the game, or
only recently actually? Like we've heard a couple people request it as like an accessibility feature because there's for some people like pressing the button that periodically like causes them pain or for some other reason they can't really do that. And so that's definitely something we're looking at now because, obviously we want everyone to play our game and to be able to, and, not have it be painful or anything, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions. So Sean, are you good?
I'm great.
So I'll just ask Nick then, is there any aspect of the game we didn't touch on or anything else you wanted to add?
Oh man, I mean, there's we talked about a lot. There's always more. Hard for me to just kind of
like a key feature that maybe we skipped out on that like you think will attract gamers that maybe we didn't touch on that aspect of the game.
Oh, let's see. We talked about importing. We talked about free play. The story.
Co-op. Don't forget co-op.
Co-op. Yeah, we talked about co-op.
You're listening out there. If you like co-op games, check it out.
Yeah. I think we've brushed upon just about everything. I guess one other thing is like there are, when you're playing through the story, we expect you to see like the first 4 intensities if you're kind of like cranking it up as you go. But there's 2 more after that. So we did try to put work into making an end game for people that are like the ones that like beat the game, but it's like, no, I want to crank it up even more. We want the people like, the people that like are like, oh, DDR is too easy on the hardest difficulty. Let me do both pads at once on the arcade machine. We want the people to be able to crank it up that high. So that's kind of, there's still a lot to play, hopefully, after you've beaten the story.
Cool.
I must say I was very underleveled then for the target. I beat it at like level 23 or 24. Though I was definitely downshifting the intensity sometimes to get through.
Yeah, your XP goes up. Your XP multiplier goes up at higher intensities, so that would probably be why.
All right. Well, you should check out Soundfall. It's on pretty much every platform out there right now. Little assist from Equilibrium Systems up there on that. So whatever your system of choice is, check it out. Just worth mentioning, I guess, Steam has the import option. I think it's exclusive to the Steam version of the game. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
So if that's a factor for you, you might want to consider that. But congrats again on the game. Hope it does well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And
Thank you.
Thanks for partaking in this interview, Nick.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been a great time.
So should we do what we played, or are we going too long?
I don't know. We're pretty long already. I think we can skip what we played. Maybe we'll just say, maybe give it to Nick. If Nick's played something that he wants to talk about, go for it. If you don't want to, that's fine too.
Yeah, the one of the games I've been playing lately, now that I can actually have some time to play games again a little bit, it's another indie game called Tunic, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. It tricks you. It presents itself as a game that you look at and you're like, oh, this is really cute. This looks kind of like, the Link's Awakening remake. And this little fox, he's got a little sword and shield. He's got a green tunic. He looks so cute. This is going to be a fun, relaxing game. And then you are very wrong. It is not a Zelda-like as it appears to be. It is a Souls-like, and it is a very, very brutal one. But it's awesome, and it does a lot of creative stuff. Like, I think one of the coolest unique things about it is like a lot of how they like explain mechanics and also like how their maps work in the game. Like, you find little pages of what is essentially like an NES instruction manual, and a lot of it isn't in any like readable, like any real language. So you kind of try and decipher how to do things from this like essentially instruction manual that looks very much like the original Legend of Zelda manual. So I thought that was really clever and cool. And I'm still playing it, even though it like usually has me like yelling at the TV because it just brutalizes you.
It does. The manual is gorgeous and a stroke of genius from like a design standpoint. So agreed there. I need to get back into Tunic. For sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly mention too on that because as we were talking about before the show, hit the second boss. I worked my ass off to get past the first boss and then hit the second boss. And I was like, forget this. I'm done with this game. But there is a no fail mode, which I may try out. I'm a little torn on it. I'm curious how you guys feel about it because what it is it's literally you can't die, I believe. So it's kind of like you can turn it on for a boss fight, get through the boss fight, and then turn it off potentially, or keep it on and only focus on the puzzle aspect of the game because that is something I'm very interested in. It has kind of a Fez-like feel to it. And so I kind of do want to maybe try that, but I don't know. It still feels like I don't know. I don't totally love it.
I don't think you've gotten to this yet. I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but there's stuff in the game that doesn't just take off health; it knocks off max health.
Oh man!
When you go to like their bonfire equivalent, it restores it, but it's like really, guys, it wasn't hard enough in that last game, and now you're doing this to me.
Oh man!
I don't know how I feel about that, but
I don't think I've got there either.
Apparently, there is also
going like a long way where my max health had gone down to literally just a sliver of health bar, and I'm just like, I'm just one hit kill mode now. Like,
well, yeah, I don't know. Apparently, there is also, if you don't like the no fail mode option, there is an option to turn off, I think, the stamina part of it. So, like, if you just find like you're in boss fights and stuff, constantly getting stuck because you're trying to roll too much or whatever, that might be something that could give you an edge. So I might try some of those options out because I do want to
go full no fail, Dwight. You know you want to full no fail.
I do, but it's the principle of the thing, you know.
All right. Well, thanks again to Nick for joining us from Drastic Games. Soundfall is the game. Nick, did you want to give any publicity, Twitter, how people can check out the game?
Yeah, check out soundfallgame.com, or you can search us on Steam or your platform or storefront of choice. Also, you can find us at Soundfall Game on Twitter, and I believe we're also Soundfall Game on just about every social media platform. So whichever one is your favorite, come find us and chat.
Cool. So if people check out the game, leave some comments below on the video. Porting assistance from Equilibrium Systems, which is Equilibrium Sys on Twitter. And you can find us on youtube.com/GameJunk. Discord links are there too if you want to talk about Soundfall in the Discord. I'm sure we will oblige that. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.